the argument that culture will be adversely impacted when people are working remotely just doesn't have a leg to stand on, because culture is not built in a building. Culture is how people come together, as you've just said, and collaborate and work together. And we have the tools and the technology to enable that.
Welcome to Future Fit Leadership, a podcast for leaders at every stage who want to stay relevant in a world that keeps changing. Leadership has shifted. The pace is faster, the expectations are higher, and the future is calling for a different kind of leader. One who is human-centered, grounded, and able to balance capability with empathy. These conversations bring together global perspectives on the skills and mindsets that help people and organizations thrive. Hello and welcome to Future Fit Leadership. I hope wherever you are listening to this podcast, you are well. The Victorian government's changes to working from home laws have sparked strong opinions across the state. Supporters argue they certainly provide certainty and protect employee flexibility. Critics say they remove an employer's ability to make decisions that are right for their business. But beyond the politics sits a much bigger question. Should governments be legislating how workplaces are led? Because every piece of legislation brings unintended consequences. What does this mean for productivity, for culture, for collaboration? And what happens when legislation begins replacing leadership judgment? There's another side to this debate which perhaps isn't getting enough attention. Many organisations have spent years moving away from rigid workplace policies, building cultures based on trust, accountability and flexibility. They recognise that flexibility looks different across every team, every role and every individual. So does a mandated minimum actually take that flexibility away? At what point does flexible work stop being flexible and simply become another rule? They're not easy questions, but they're questions we should all be asking. My guest today is Karen Ferris, one of Australia's leading experts on organisational change and the future of work. Rather than taking a political position, Karen challenges us to think the conversation entirely. What if we've confused hybrid work with flexible work? What if the real issue isn't where people work, but whether leaders have the capability to build high-performing teams built on trust, accountability and outcomes? This isn't a conversation about who wins the work from home debate. It's a conversation about leadership and whether we're building workplaces around legislation or people. Please enjoy my conversation with Karen. Well, hello, Karen Ferris. Welcome to Future Fit Leadership. How are you?
I'm very good, actually. My voice is a little croaky. I've got what everyone else has got at the moment, but I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
It is going around at the moment, whatever the lurgy is. But you and I connected on LinkedIn, post a really interesting article that you wrote. But before we get into that, I would love to know a little bit about your journey. How did you become one of the country's leading voices on change, resilience, and the future of work?
Yes, a very good question, aren't they all? So my background was in IT service management, so very different sphere in a way. So that's what brought me out to Australia in 1998 for work. Never looked back. So I was from the UK. You might be able to tell.
I tell by the accent. That's a dead giveaway.
And it was whilst I was working in IT service management that I came across a framework for embedding change into an organisation. When I looked at this framework, I thought this would be really good in the service management space. And it was all about organisational change. And I realised I've been doing organisational change for most of my working life. I just hadn't called it that. I've been a team leader and all that sort of thing, leading teams, and so leading those people through various different types of changes. So that really shifted me then into the organisational change management space. And that was the first book that I wrote, which was focused on the service management industry, since it's been rewritten for all industries. So that was my focus on organisational change. Then I started to look at, in conjunction, workforce resilience, because my frustration was that people were saying things like, oh, we have mental first aiders on site. I'm like, well, yeah, that's all well and good, but have you got rid of the stigma that avoids people going and asking them for help? And people going, no. So it was like these these one-off gestures being made to help people in the workplace be more resilient in the face of constant change. So that was that sort of work I did. And then a big focus on leadership, because I really do believe that we have, and have had for a while, a leadership crisis, and we're just in a lot of situations choosing to ignore it.
Mm,
Um, and it's having its toll on the
yeah.
workforce, as we can see.
And leadership really changed post-COVID. I mean, I know we all talk about it and it's probably becoming really boring, but that was a bit of a marker for everybody in terms of, if you want one in how leadership changed,
Yeah,
and hybrid work, or the model of hybrid work that emerged post-COVID, was a huge influence on how leadership was expected to change. Why do you think leaders have found it so hard to move towards this new model of work?
I think it's, in a nutshell, it's about control. I think there's a lot of leaders, and we're generalizing.
Mm,
There's a lot of leaders, especially in the larger organizations, who really want to go back to how it was before COVID, when I could see you in the office, and in their heads, I knew you were working, and we're like, no, you didn't.
mm,
They think,
correct.
I can walk the corridors, I can walk past the desks, I see people there, and I have this sense of control. Now, what really is really frustrating, and the sad part of it, is that during COVID, it was the greatest opportunity to find a new way of working for
Hmm.
everybody. And for many leaders, they just couldn't wait to get back to how it was before then. So even though we didn't have organizations going out of business because of COVID, or lost productivity, or a terrible impact on the culture of the organization, none of that happened. But that's what people are quoting as, we need people back in the office because it's about culture and collaboration. And that's just a load of nonsense. Yeah, culture isn't a building. It doesn't make any sense. So, and I think that we've got a whole generation of leaders who are not prepared to unlearn how they led pre-COVID, to say, okay, the world's changed. I need to evolve with it. I need to change my leadership style. I need to move away from looking at control and moving totally to an environment of trust and empowerment. And I think a lot of leaders are finding that very difficult, because when you go through a process of unlearning and learning, the first is the wake up call to say something's fundamentally shift. I am no longer serving myself, and I'm no
Mm.
longer serving my team by the way I'm leading. So the wake up call is a big aha moment. And when you have to unlearn what you've probably spent decades honing,
Well, every book was written about that as well
yeah,
in leadership, right?
yeah,
So,
that's right. So all that stuff you've read and all that stuff that you've practiced and whatever, it's got to go out the window. It's got to be removed. This isn't about adding to, this is about removing that and saying there's a whole new leadership style I need to adopt and I need to learn and relearn. And that means I might not be the expert I thought I was anymore. And that's hard for a lot of people.
mm,
I might not be
mm,
respected the way I thought I was anymore. But those leaders who are doing that are the ones that, are ahead of the game. But unfortunately, there's a whole raft of leadership that's still stuck back in
mm,
pre-COVID times.
mm,
And how we move them out of that is the big $1 million question.
yeah.
I think the wake-up call will be, it's a slow burn, and I think it will be people leaving organizations slowly and then suddenly turn around and go, what happened? Well, it was you.
And new management coming through. I mean, I can see new emerging leaders will have a different view on how to lead and manage people. I'm interested to know, what does hybrid work look like to you? Because it is different for everybody.
Yeah. And I think it's become, what's the word, corrupted, if you like, the term hybrid. For me, we should never use the hybrid term. It's binary. It's that or
Mm,
this. True flexibility, work flexibility, is be able to work from where you want to work, when you want to work, when it makes sense to do so. It's not home or the office. It could be home, library, hotel, shared
cafe.
workspace, cafe, whatever it is. That's the true flexibility. That's what we meant to or should have put in place. But organizations then felt, oh, well, we'll just go halfway
Mm,
and say, we need you in the office 2 days a week and you work from home the other three, or whatever it is. That's not flexibility. And when organizations say you can work from home, and that depends on the employee, your days at home are Wednesday, Thursday. Well, that's not flexibility, that's a mandate.
mm,
The same
mm,
as 5 days a week in the office is a mandate. So we've lost the plot along the way saying hybrid. Um, and we need this generation of leaders, which we've just been talking about, to wake up to the fact that work is what we do, not where we go.
I
What we
like that.
do, yeah,
Yeah,
not
I
where we
like
go.
that.
So flexibility is allowing is trusting employees. I mean, at the end of the day, they're adults. You employed adults. Can we please treat them as adults now?
Yep.
So we should be able to treat our people as adults and trust them to say, when it makes sense for us to gather in person, wherever that might be, when it's intentional, it makes sense to do so, we will do that. We'll get together to do some team building or some high energy brainstorming or collaboration. But attending a place has to be intentional, has to be a reason, not just because it's a Wednesday, not just because it's my second day of my quota to be in the office and I'm going to go in there, have a 2-hour commute to sit on Zoom calls all day.
Yeah.
It makes absolutely
Make
no
no sense.
sense. Yeah.
No. I want to touch now on what has happened in Victoria. And for people who haven't followed this debate, because, we've got listeners from all over the world, can you explain what the proposed work from home laws actually mean in Victoria?
So it is an interesting thing that's evolved. So let me say outright, this is not a political, this is not a political
No.
statement. I actually am a Labour voter. So there you go. It's the Labour government in Victoria. I just don't agree with this proposed legislation. So what they're saying is, and I think the intent is right. Yeah, the intent is to say, look, if you've got employers who will not, and they're using the word again, flexibility, and I'm using air quotes, flexibility. If you've got an employer who won't give you flexibility, we will legislate that they must allow you to work from home 2 days a week. And their argument or the proposal is that that provides flexibility. Well, it doesn't, but it will also save you money and time and commute and everything else. Now, the employee and the employer have to agree on what those 2 days will be. So they get named and written down. It's an agreement. If an employee wants to change those days, they have to put it in writing. The employer then has 21 days to respond. If the employer rejects it, then the employee can go to, there's a number of bodies, they can go and escalate it through arbitration and whatever. So there's a lot of red tape around it as well.
Made it so complicated, haven't we?
That is scaring a lot of organisations, as it should do.
Yeah.
But like I say, going back to it, the intent is right to provide more flexibility, but I think they're doing the wrong thing because they're just introducing another mandate where it was the employer saying you will work in the office 2 days a week. Now the government is saying you will work in the office 2 days a week. It's just rigidity replacing another rigidity.
But also when governments get involved in workplace design, it gets dangerous.
Yes, very dangerous. And my fear is that it will backfire because you could have an employer now who or employees are saying, we want more flexibility, and they're trying to discuss it and trying to do the right thing. And it's all very hard and everything else, which shouldn't mean it shouldn't go in the too hard basket. But now that employer could say, ha, you get 2 days and that's it. No more, 2 days. And we agree which 2 days they are. So now we've created a ceiling that if an employee or employees say, well, we actually think it'd be a better model if we had true flexibility and we worked with our leaders to decide when we come into the office and when we don't, the employer now can say, nah, not even talking about it. Legislation says 2 days and your days are Monday and Tuesday. So then you've got the situation where an employee says, well, yeah, I've got Monday and Tuesday, but on Wednesday I've got some tradespeople coming to the house and they need to be there to or I've got a large delivery happening. Can I work from home on Wednesday? No, your days are Monday, Tuesday. We've legislated on it. It's just going to give those bad employers and bad leaders carte blanche to say no. And that could make it worse for a lot of employees than it is now. And you could have an employer that's currently allowing people to work 3 days from home and can say, no, we're going back to 2 because the legislation said so. So I just think it's going to so backfire. And now there was a latest in the Australian news on, I think it was, check the facts, 9.com. They said over half of these businesses, and all businesses are impacted, there's no particular, the only difference between large and small is that the small businesses, I think it's less than 15 people, get longer to implement the legislation than the other organisations. That's the only difference. It applies across the board. And over 50% of these organisations in Victoria are saying, well, we're going to offshore these roles now. And I'm like, hold on, you're fighting back against remote work, but you're going to offshore. Isn't that remote? And the only reason, so it's just, I'm laughing at it because it's just absurd. It's like saying, well, we don't want you to work remotely, but the government's going to legislate that you can for 2 days. That's going to create us so much red tape and bureaucracy that we will offshore your role overseas. So we can actually control how you work. Where here we can't control it anymore because the government's legislating. But then it's going back to, hold on, wasn't the whole start of this argument about people working remotely? But now you're talking about offshoring? Or because someone is not sitting in Victoria or they're sitting in, I don't know, New Zealand. What's the difference?
What's the difference? So, Karen, do you think that and you mentioned this earlier, there'll be bad leaders or poor leaders or leaders who like the compliance, who will say, great, I've now got the government on my side. You will be in the office these 2 days and it is what it is. And, you will do what I tell you to do around this. And then there'll be other businesses and leaders who have been working really hard on getting the hybrid model, the flexible model right. They've, had experiments on, different ways of doing the work. And you would hope that those organizations and those leaders will continue to do that work. And then suddenly you have two very different environments in the workplace. And there will come a point in time where employees will go, when they're at the interview, will actually ask the question, do you follow the mandate in your organization or do you do other than the mandate? And if you do other than the mandate, I'd rather work for you.
Absolutely. And it's already happened, is it? We see all the job adverts now that say, on-site, remote or hybrid or whatever, because people are asking those questions up front. So yeah, and that's where I was talking about the slow burn, that I think people will drift away from these organizations that are, sticking to the rules, to one where they'll say, well, yes, we know about the legislation, but actually, we have a totally flexible sort of model. But therein lies another issue, and I don't know how the legislation will handle this, because the employer has to say, like, Karen Ferris has her 2 flexible days as per legislation on a Monday and Tuesday. Now that is taking away the whole flexibility that organisation might have had in place. They might have been saying, Karen Ferris, you can work wherever you want to work as long as you achieve the outcomes that we've set and the business needs, etc. Now, how's that going to work? I don't know how that's going to work. If you have total flexibility now to work where you want, when you want, and the legislation comes in, and the employer has to show, if they were to get asked the hard question, are you complying with this legislation? Well, no, we're not, because Karen hasn't worked in the office for 3 days for the past 3 months. She's had no need to. She's doing concentration, focused work, and there's no need for her to come into the office. So is that going to backfire on those really good organisations?
Well, you would hope that the madness of that doesn't happen, right? Because you would hope, but then crazier things have happened. One of the things I want to just touch on around, the hybrid flexible model, what happens when, we talk about collaboration and mentoring and learning? You've got young people coming to the workforce. The best way to learn is to follow someone or sit with someone for, 2 or 3 weeks at a time. In a genuinely complete flexible model, how do those things work?
So again, it's going back to treating people as adults and being intentional about in-person working or intentional about working in the office. So if it is going to be far more productive and achieve better outcomes by having a person sit in person beside another person and take them through the job, to mentor them, to coach them, to train them, whatever it might be, then do it. It makes sense to do it. But there's organizations that have, global organizations with true flexibility that are managing, coaching and training and mentoring globally around the world without those people sitting in
next
person.
to each other.
And it works for them. They have the models and the technology and whatever it might be, and they've trained their leaders and they've trained their coaches and they've trained the trainers to be able to train people remotely. So they've invested in it, so it works for them. But the argument about, we can't, work remotely because we won't be able to mentor people. No one's saying it has to be 100% remote or 100% not office. That's not the argument. It's like, yes, we'll go into the office when it makes sense to do so. Today I'm training John on this new technology. So I'm going to sit with John and watch what John's doing and correct it when it's not going the way it should, etc. And John can ask questions. That makes sense for me to do that commute today. So I'm going to do it. So it's just applying common sense, and that, that I'm not going to try and do it remotely because I know it's not going to be beneficial to me, and it's not going to be beneficial to the trainee either.
Yeah, but that leads to the question, and we run a business here and we do have a flexible environment. But I've always said to the people I manage is whatever flexibility we choose to have as a business, and it is not what the Victorian government has mandated. It has to work for the employee, but it also has to work for the business.
Yeah.
It can't just be one-sided. So what are some of the responsibility employees carry in making a flexible workplace successful?
Absolutely, there's the onus on the employee. It's not the employee standing up and saying, this is what I demand and you're going to have to supply it. It's about the employer and the employee getting together and saying, rather than it being a unilateral decision, one side or the other, both parties get together and say, here's our business outcomes. This is what we need to achieve. And you're going to get everyone to agree to that because it's the future of the organisation. It's your job. We need the business to be successful. These are the outcomes. Okay, this is what you'd like from a flexibility point of view. This is what you'd like as a workforce, a flexibility point of view. How will that enable us to meet those business outcomes? Where's the rub? Where's the bit that says that's not going to actually align? And how do we come to a compromise on that? Because as long as the business is achieving its outcomes, who cares how, where people work to do it? So it's having those conversations, and that, I don't want to use the word negotiation, but that's sort of,
It is really.
And again, if we're treating people as adults and have those adult conversations, I'm going to go, okay, boss, yeah, I agree. That's what we need to achieve. It actually doesn't make any sense for me not to be coming in on a Friday because the nature of my role, or that's my training day or my mentoring day, whatever it might be. So I'll make sure I help the business meet the business outcomes because that's in my interest. So my job's on the line if we don't, and I'll do that. So the onus is on the employee as well. It's not an all right out, we want everything and we're not going to consider how the business operates.
Taking a leadership view now, what leadership skills have become really essential to make this world work?
The ones that are missing. So we still have leaders with that command and control mindset. The skills we need today are leaders who have emotional intelligence, basically. We've talked about that for decades and decades, and we just sort of eye roll when it happens. Oh, emotional intelligence, yeah, whatever. But it really is important to be able not only to be self-aware, but aware of how other people are feeling and operating and why that's taking place. We need leaders who have that empathy. So when the employee, for example, says, my day's at home on Monday, Tuesday, I have a large delivery on Wednesday, then you have a leader that says, yeah, take that day.
Sure.
Yeah, it's okay. Do what you need to do. And that's where you've got leaders with empathy.
I've got a young lady who works with me and she's got two kids. One is at kinder, one is at school. We've just had school holidays and she's worked the entire school holidays from home on a lot of the days. Now, as an employer, I could have said, absolutely not. How are you going to do your work given that you've got kids at home and, both your mother and your mother-in-law and your mum are not well enough to look after the children? You sort out your care. Now, I was like, yep, sure, whatever. The work still got done. She still managed to, stay at home and look after her kids and shared the workload with her husband. But if I put my foot down, I probably would have disengaged her from my business.
Absolutely. You disengaged her, and then you might actually lose her. You'll walk out the door, and a lot of employers are saying, we're losing our talent. We're losing the people we really want to keep, because who's most likely to get a new job? The talent. Yeah, they're the ones that are going to walk out first. And people have already said they'd rather take a pay cut than lose their flexibility. The research has been done. So that's saying people would walk. So, but yeah, empathy, it's absolutely important. And it's something that people again say, oh, empathy. And yes, I'm empathetic. And I'm like, no, you're not.
Mm.
It's not sympathy. It's not, oh dear, sorry to hear how you're feeling. It's a lot more than that. And we need to understand, and we need leaders who can be adaptive. Technology in the world of work is changing faster than leaders are changing.
Mm.
So
Mm.
we need to be truly adaptive to say, how I'm doing something today might not be how I need to do it tomorrow, and being open and transparent. We have leaders who expect that as soon as they're given the title, and the leadership should never be a title, but they feel it is, that they have to have all the answers. And we suddenly lose all transparency. Rather than leaders said, you know what, I actually don't know the answer to that. What do you think? So we have true collaboration and leaders who recognize that they're not having to be the expert. That's why you have a team.
Mm.
Why suddenly do you think you have to have all answers and be the expert in everything? That's what your team are there
Yeah.
for.
Put
You're
put
there to not direct them, you're there to provide direction.
Yeah, put good
That's a
people
different.
around you and get out of their way. That's what you
That's
need to
right.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
How do you build trust when you don't see people every day?
Trust is, it's not, again, it's not about presence. It's about you as a leader or us as leaders being transparent, being open and honest, and operating with integrity. If we say we're going to do something, we do it and we follow through. If we can't do it, we say why. If we don't have the answers, we admit we don't have the answers, but we will help people find the answers. And you truly listen to what employees are saying, and they know that they've been heard. And that's the difference. We talk about communication and listening, and I just roll my eyes because people do. It's like, oh yeah, we all communicate and listen. I'm like, no, you don't. Do you really listen? Did you really hear what that employee was saying to you so
Mm,
that you can act accordingly? If people don't think they're being listened to, they don't trust you.
they don't trust you. So I'm
Right.
going to flip this question now, and I'm going to add a little bit to it. I'm going to flip the question. How do you, as an employee, build trust with your employer in a flexible world, and also ensure that the accountability doesn't become surveillance? Because if you're an employee, for me, they're the two things. The onus is on you
Mm.
to make sure that your employer not only trusts you but knows that you're doing the job, and that's where the
Mm.
accountability piece comes in.
Yeah. And there's two sides to that as well. So it's about a leader being clear on expectations and outcomes, and the employee then saying, okay, I understand what you expect of me. And it's about those two parties having the conversation to make sure. So if I'm saying to an employee, if I'm the leader and I'm saying to an employee, this is what I expect from you, I make sure I'm clear about when and what it looks like. I'm always there to support you. This isn't abdication. I'm always there to support you, but then play it back to me. So I make sure that the employee knows what's expected. And then I get, like you said, I get out the way.
Mm.
And then the employee gets on with the job. And if there's an environment of trust and psychological safety, that employee should be able to say, I'm struggling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure how I'm going to achieve this by the date you wanted it. So there's no sort of going off and stressing and whatever because they don't think they're going to be able to achieve the outcome. And it's about reporting in as needed, as agreed, to say this is the progress I've been making. Are we both sides of the party happy with how I'm progressing? Am I ahead of a schedule? Am I on schedule? Do I have any obstacles I need to be removed? And it's having those conversations on an ongoing basis, with your leader. And that's building, that builds the trust that the job is being done and the outcomes are being delivered. It should never be about the hours that you work.
Mm.
As a leader, if you get the job done in 2 hours rather than 2 days, I don't really care. I'm using a, a generalization there, but it's about the outcome that you receive, that you produce is the most important thing. And when we have leaders that are using surveillance to check that employees are at their keyboard, it's like, seriously? Employees know how to get around those
Yeah.
things. And I'll just tell a bit of a story because I love this. When there's a company called Top 10 VPN, and when COVID hit, they were monitoring the uptake globally on employee surveillance software, and it spiked in March 2020. It went through the roof compared to the time previous year. The thing is, it hasn't dropped back. We all thought, oh, it's a knee-jerk reaction. We need to put surveillance software out there and start monitoring our employees. It's leveled out. It's stayed at that level
Mm.
since COVID. And what happened then was all the boss work came in, and employees spent so much time trying to work out how they could keep that green light on and keep the mouse moving on the desk. I wrote an article way back when. Some of the things employees were coming up with was like attaching the mouse to a toy train that was going around on the,
Round and round.
you know, or to the oscillating fan on the desk. Some crazy stuff was going on, and I'm like, they're spending hours coming up with these
Rather
workarounds,
than working.
and then rather than working. So, and you still see it now. We've got Teams or Skype or whatever it might be. Everyone just wants to keep that green light on because there's the
Mm.
sense that if the boss sees it go yellow or red, they think I'm not working. I could be
Mm.
reading a really detailed document. I could be working offline, you know, where it makes sense to do so. But we still have that leadership mindset, which comes back to the start of our conversation, that says, unless the light's on, unless I can see you, you're not working.
How do we build on our culture in a flexible environment where people aren't physically together or not spending a lot of time physically together, where we perhaps are not having the spontaneous conversations around the water cooler or making a
Hmm.
coffee? Innovation can be impacted when people aren't in a huddle together and trying to solve a problem. How do we build on that in a flexible workplace?
The argument that culture will be adversely impacted when people are working remotely just doesn't have a leg to stand on, because culture is not built in a building. Culture is how people come together, as you've just said, and collaborate and work together. And we have the tools and the technology to enable that. There are tools out there that will link people up spontaneously, like have a virtual water cooler. Yes. So Karen, who's interested in what's going on in the World Cup right now, because I've got a profile up there, will link me up with somebody, depending on the work schedule. It's clever technology, works all this out. It doesn't just interrupt you in the middle of you doing something. Will link me up with, Sabina, who's also got an interest in that, just for a quick coffee catch up. So it just assigns you 10 minutes to chat. So there's things like that. But it's just, I've got a client I work remotely with, and the team I'm working with on this client will often just jump into conversations. They can see you're free, you're not in a meeting, you haven't located yourself as busy, and we'll just jump in. I've had people say, "How are you feeling now, Karen? I heard you got the lurgy," and "Oh, this is what the doctor did for me." And we have those conversations, and then we start talking about, "Oh, what are you up to today?" So those conversations still happen if you allow people to have those conversations,
Mm.
so that they can. The green light doesn't have to be on all the
Doesn't
time, because I'm
all the
having a
time.
conversation with somebody
Mm.
and working on those collaboration things and saying, let's get together. We don't have to be in person. If we can, great, let's do that. But the culture is about how people work together and how they're led, and not the building that they're sitting in.
There will always be people in any workforce or any business that like to be in the office. I'm one of those
Yes.
people. I don't like working from home. I do from time to time, but I love the energy
Hmm.
of people. I love the connection. I love the conversations, and I just work better at my desk. So, would one of the things that concerns me is if I have a bunch of people as a leader that I see in the office all the time,
Hmm.
and a bunch of people who work remotely that I don't see all the time, are we potentially going to have opportunities that are missed for those that are not in the office, like promotions or something else?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big one, and it comes down to our own sort of internal biases and stuff like that. And it's been shown that people who you see are more likely to be given the opportunities than people you don't see.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big shift in leadership mindset. That if we are truly going to have people in office, people remotely, or wherever they might be, that we have to, as leaders, ensure that we are fair and equitable in how we lead and manage those people, and recognize our biases. Because, like you say, it should be a choice. I never have advocated not having an office or a place to go. I think we should, for those opportunities to get together. But it should be, yes, to say, it should be an option that if people want to go into the office all the time, they can. But yeah, we need to educate leaders how to lead those distributed teams, and to make
Mm.
sure that our biases don't come into play when we have people who are with us every day of the week and those that aren't.
If you were putting a building together today, knowing what you know about flexible work, how would you design it? Because the offices that we currently live and sit and work in are just completely obsolete or will be very soon.
I think you've got to, and I'm not a workplace designer, but think of I would start thinking about all the different types of work that people do. So there's those collaboration, high energy gets togethers. So we need a facility with really good video conferencing for those people for some reason can't be there, who can participate. And we've got, shared whiteboards and all that sort of stuff. Then you've got people who want to come in the office to do focused work. That's what I prefer to work from home to
Mm,
do, because that's my
mm,
preference. But
mm.
some people, they can't get a quiet time at home. So they would prefer to do focus work. So then you need quiet spaces where people can sort of isolate themselves a little bit to concentrate on what they're focused on. You've got smaller collaboration spaces. So think of all the different type of work and activities and then design the workplace accordingly. And yeah, the big challenge is like, how many desks do I need?
Yeah.
But generally you have a sense of how many people are coming into the office, if you need that
Mm,
capability. And
mm,
I would have more desks than I assume are going to be needed for those,
mm.
before it's going to cost me at the end of the day. But yeah, don't design the cubicles and the desks and fixed desks. Have stuff that's work-based, activity-based, really is what we're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. If you were advising every CEO in Australia today, what's the one conversation they should be having with their leadership team about the future of work?
I would say the need to recognize that they need to unlearn. Most of them will probably have to unlearn how they've been leading and having that frank conversation that that's not easy to do. But right now, we're not serving ourselves or our teams by leading how we used to. And as your CEO, I will give you all the help and support we needed to transform our leadership team, transform the way we are leading today. Otherwise, it will tell, we will lose our people, but we have to evolve as fast as or keep up with the way the world of work has evolved, how way of technology has evolved. We've got AI now that's causing a whole
Mm.
other issue for leadership. Again, AI is changing how leaders have to lead. So are we ready for that as well? So that's why I'd be saying, CEO, is we need to recognize, and a good CEO will say, I've had to do the same thing. How I was leading, this organization 5 years ago is not how I can lead it today. Things have
Yeah,
changed, the organization's changed, and
yeah.
let's do that as a collective.
You mentioned AI, and it's one of the questions I do have for you, and I'll bring it up forward now. There's been a lot of talk about how AI will replace a lot of the work that we do.
Hmm.
What impact will that have on a flexible workplace?
I mean, it is going to do a lot of the tasks and automate a lot of the mundane things that people do. I'm not sure how that affect flexibility. Maybe I haven't thought that through enough. But what is happening, a lot of organizations are reacting, and leadership again is saying, and we've seen it in the headlines, we will get rid of all our entry level jobs because we'll
Yeah.
automate them with AI and we don't need those people anymore. And now we're seeing a turnaround with some of those organizations are going, oh dear, we do need them.
We have no pipeline.
We have no pipeline, but also I think Ford is one of them. I've got an article coming out soon about Ford and IBM and Klarna, who've all had to turn around and say, we've got no pipeline. But
Hmm.
also we had those expert people, the problem solvers, because they're usually the older members of the team, the grey engineers or something, I think they call them, who can solve those detailed issues and are also needed to train AI. And they've had to bring, I think, 500 people back into the organization. So they've had to do a backflip. So you can't just say all those people aren't going to be needed in the organization now and we'll just get rid of them. You need to think through the consequences. I think that's what's not happening at the moment. People are jumping on the bandwagon of fear of missing out. Yeah, and we shouldn't be looking at, all those people work from home, then we can just automate their jobs because they can't be doing much, can they?
No. I'll share my take on this because we are
Yeah.
talking about flexibility at the moment. I look at it and I go, we have in many ways been so rigid about leadership. We had all the books, we had all the training courses,
Hmm.
we had all the leadership speakers globally around the world talking about this is how, and rinse, repeat. I'm going to follow these four leaders and what they do, and I'm going to apply it in my business. And I've read the book, and there are 5 things that I need to do, and I'm going to apply it. Today, when we talk about flexible workplaces, we also need to talk about flexible leadership styles, where we cannot be out there in the public going, well, we're going to get rid of all entry level and this is what the new world of work is going to look like. And we're trying to create a rigid environment that just looks different.
Mm.
It's not going to work. I believe that the world of leadership is now moving into that flexible domain where we actually don't know what's going to happen next week because everything is moving so fast that we just have to go with the flow and redesign everything we do on a regular basis. And it may mean that we redesign workshops and how we work and our leadership styles on a regular basis. And and that puts a lot of stress and pressure on us. But I think the day of having anything rigid and set in concrete is just no longer relevant.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
Yeah, no, and absolutely right. This all comes down to adaptive leadership, which means you continually
Changing.
ready to adapt, shift, change, whatever it might be, and accept that we don't know what's around the corner. We just don't. We don't know what change is going to hit. A lot of the time we can preempt it, we can forecast it, but we don't know when the next pandemic's going to come around the corner
No.
and how we're going to, or whatever it's going to be. We need to just be ready for it. And that's why I work with organisations to build resilience. To say, let's just accept we don't know, but let's be ready for it rather than just go into a total meltdown, What do you mean we don't know what's coming next? Well, that's the real world we live in.
don't.
But we
Yeah.
can equip ourselves to be ready and on the front foot all the time for that sort of, and accept that the workplace is, or the world of work is complex, and it's just going to get more complex as we go.
Yeah.
But that's our reality, and that's the world we live in, and we need a lot of people to have that wake-up call that this is the world we're in. We can't change it. It's just going to get faster and faster and more complex as we go.
What's in all the work that you've done and the experience that you've had around this space, what's the questions around flexible workplace that we should be asking, not only ourselves, but our employees and our organizations that we perhaps not?
I think it's that coming back to that conversation that we should be asking the question, what does the organisation need and what do employees want? And do they align? And if they don't, how do we make them align? Because those conversations aren't happening. We've got employees on one part of the spectrum saying, we want total flexibility, we want to be treated as adults, we want to be able to make our own decisions about when we go into the office and when we don't and how we work together. And they're all sound arguments. The other end of the spectrum is the organisation saying, well, we're really worried because we'll lose control. We won't be able to see what you're doing. And blah, blah, blah. And those two parties need to come together to have the conversation. There's no conversation going on in a lot of organisations. It's just being mandated, And the scary thing is some of those mandates, and you'll probably know this, that some of the big banks here in Australia, mandate the number of days they have to be in the office. And if you miss that quota, they have tiers. So if you miss it by this percent, then you do not get a pay rise or a bonus.
What?
If you miss it by this percent, your bonus will be impacted. Yes? Do you want me to name the bank?
No, it's not in the bank, but that is just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. So, and then if you miss it totally, well, then you're in trouble. It's a management conversation with you. So these tiers are published.
But that's not flexibility, though.
No, it's not. And it's that to me is bullying.
Yeah.
Conversion, but that is happening. So, and it's not just one bank, it's many of them. It tends to be the financial institutions that are doing it. It's just, coercion and bullying. It's just unbelievable. And so many people I talk to are not aware of it and goes, really? Yeah. And I know people who work for these organisations are saying, I've got to go into the office today, otherwise I'm not
lose my bonus, which has got nothing to do with how hard you've worked to get the results you've got.
The days of where we thought, performance was based on outcomes is now performance based on days in the office.
That's just, yes, well.
Just crazy. And
that's crazy.
It sounds like, we're going backwards, aren't we, rather than going forward?
We are. And added to that, I mean, for particularly the Victorian leaders who are listening to this podcast, with the legislation that's come in, we've solved yesterday's problem but created a new one. What's your advice to them or suggestions to them on how they need to manage it? Because as you said, some of us have got amazingly flexible workplaces, and now this mandate has come in. Like, what are we supposed to do? Follow the government mandate or continue doing what we're doing?
Again, I think my advice would be to have a deep dive into what the legislation means to you. If you've got a totally flexible workforce, would you be asked to show the paperwork that says that, Karen, works from home on a Wednesday and Thursday, and Mary Jane works from home on a Thursday and Friday. And would that get checked? Because they might be in office on one of those days because they've chosen to be as it should be. So I worry that it's going to cause such an overhead to those organisations that are doing absolutely the right thing. Is there going to be questions asked if I choose not to work from home this week? I work totally in the office. How's that legislation that says they should have given me 2 days to work from home going to affect? I don't know. I haven't done that. I'd be getting some real legal
But
advice. You'd
how will
hope.
they police any of that? I mean, with so many businesses, it'd be very difficult for them to
It
police
would be very
unless
difficult.
people start reporting. It would be very difficult, and that may happen. You may have unhappy employees in a business who report on a business, but it's a very hard mandate to actually police at an organisational level,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. So that's why I don't know how it's going
Yeah,
to it's play
yeah.
out. I mean, there are supposed to be written agreements between every employee and the employer about which 2 days you are going to work from home. It has to be documented. And if that's the case, there has to be a record of it. And it's not adhered to. I don't know what the
What the
consequences are.
consequences are?
If anyone was to check on it. I don't know.
Yeah,
If no one's going to check on it, why it has to be documented? Yeah,
yeah,
why we have to keep a record of it. And as we said before, the employee can ask for that to be changed, but the employer has 21 days to do that. Well, that's not flexible when an employee has a genuine reason for it not to be a Tuesday anymore and to be a Wednesday, because of school drop-offs or wherever it might be, and the partner is not able to do it anymore on that day. But I have to wait 21 business days for that to be considered.
It's a really good example of an overarching government with making decisions with unintentional consequences that
Yeah,
are actually against the people they're trying to protect.
yes. That's what sort of pricked my ears when I first heard of it. And I was thinking, I get the intent, but it's no, I got this worry started happening, and that's when I
Mm,
started to really think about what it is they were actually doing. And I'm like, okay, the argument is, yeah, we want to give you more flexibility, we'll save you money. We are trying to overcome those leaders that won't give you that and the outdated leadership. I'm like, yes, your intent is right, but the problem that you're covering is the outdated leadership.
mm,
I'd
mm.
rather see a legislation that says about true flexibility, that every employee can choose where they work, when they work, how they work. And we need to have a leadership that can manage that. And that the government will, and we do this through equal opportunities, will provide the training and the education for leaders to do this. And if an employee is not being given that true flexibility and they can make the right business case, then they can escalate it and we go
Yeah,
through the arbitration and all that.
arbitration.
Not because I want to change my Wednesday to a Thursday.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My last question to you, Karen. I've loved our conversation. We've probably created more questions for people than we have answers. But let's look at the future. 2 years from now, you and I having a conversation 2 years from now. What does the world of work look like?
Oh, I'd like to say very different, but you know what? I'm not sure it will be the way we're seeing things at the moment. And maybe it's just my pessimistic head on my shoulders on a Friday morning. We're seeing that this approach to legislation, the response of employers now saying we'll offshore these jobs when they've just argued that remote doesn't work, and now they're saying it will because we don't want the bureaucracy and we want to have more control, so we're going to employ more contractors. We've got those mandates, as I mentioned, and the impact of if you're not adhering to them on bonuses and pay. I just think we're going backwards.
Mm,
And I hope we can turn it around. I hope these sort of conversations can make people sit up and think about what it is we're doing and the impact that we're having, on our employees and ourselves as leaders. Rather than, struggle with this and fight against it, why not come to the table and make flexible working work for everybody, including ourselves? And it's been truly flexible. I would love to see that in however many years' time you just said. I'm not sure we're going to. I worry
no.
we're going to be more of the same, and if not, go backwards even further.
No. Well, I hope you're wrong. I
I
hope that
do too.
I hope that leaders understand that the new way of working is not just in how we lead ourselves, but
Mm,
how we lead people and the environments that we create. It's adaptable and
yeah,
flexible. They're probably the two words that you and I have used the most in this
yeah.
conversation. And that goes to my leadership style and how I show up at work
Hmm.
versus the environment, the people that I lead and how they work as well. It's
Yeah.
not just the employee and the work style that I choose. It's actually everything that we do in work today.
Yeah, yeah, and
So
it's not unachievable. It
no,
is.
no.
That's the frustration, is that
Mm,
it is achievable and people can change. And when they do see that unlearning and relearning from a leadership point of view, and you see the light go on, and yeah, I actually could do that, and my team are far
mm,
happier than they've ever been, and I'm happier the way I lead now. Yes, it was a tough journey and a tough decision, but I'm now ready to the next change. I have to accept that how I led yesterday may not be how I need to lead tomorrow.
mm,
And if we
mm.
get that understanding, then we are on the right journey.
Yeah. Karen, thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights. It's been wonderful having this conversation with
Thank
you.
you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
If you like what you've heard, please share, rate and review this podcast, and don't forget to share it with anyone who might benefit from hearing it. The producer of Future Fit Leadership is Maritza Barone from Guide Your Light Network. If you would like to reach out to me, please DM me on any of my social media platforms. I'm available for speaking at conferences or consulting to your business. Future Fit is created in partnership with Future Leadership, a capability ecosystem for boards and executives. If you'd like to join the community and receive a free takeaway each week, sign up at the Future Exchange app in my show notes. Thank you for having me in your space.
This is a Guide Your Light Network production, creating podcasts with purpose.